So I picked up the omnibus for X-Men: The Age of Apocalypse, which is wonderfully huge. This thing is like a good preacher's Bible-sized book, just chock full of X-Men goodness. Now, The Age of Apocalypse was a big crossover event that happened right around, I guess you could say, the real peak of X-Men's productivity in terms of the sheer volume of titles and sales that they were having there in the mid-90s. And it's basically the quickest way to sum it up would be to say it's like their version of Star Trek's mirror universe. Something happens which breaks the timeline that causes this alternate universe where Magneto's in charge of the X-Men and Apocalypse is close to global domination. And it starts off with a little 5-issue story arc called Legion Quest that sets up how this whole strange madcap alternate world was created. And Legion Quest basically is about Legion, obviously. Legion is Charles Xavier's son, who has just recently emerged from a coma, and his split personalities have all been refused together back into one coherent persona. And in the process of that happening to him, all the various psychic talents that his different personalities would manifest are all now under his control and accessible. So his overall power level is seemingly amped up. So it starts off with this really nice cold open where Storm has led a small team of X-Men to where Legion is in Israel, where he's erected this energy dome. And basically, the first issue of Legion Quest is just them confronting him to find themselves sucked through a time vortex. Storm, Bishop, Psylocke, and Iceman, leaving Jean Grey behind. And after that, Lilandra, Queen of the Shi'ar Empire, and distant, removed lover of Charles Xavier, discovers that the Imkron crystal has something going wrong with it. And as you recall the Dark Phoenix saga, you know the Imkron crystal is quite an important artifact. Part 2 of Legion Quest picks up in the 1970s, where Charles Xavier and Magneto, who's currently going by the name of Magnus, are first meeting, and they don't even realize that for sure that they're both mutants. They're just both volunteering at this medical center in Israel. Meanwhile, in the modern times, the rest of the X-Men reach Israel, and they're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. In the past, the X-Men that went back with Legion are kind of amnesiac. They can't quite remember why they're there or what they're supposed to be doing, even though they do have a vague sense of their identities and that they know each other and whatnot. Here we have Magneto kind of relating some of his past, discovering that this amnesiac patient that just came into the hospital he's volunteering at is Legion, and is taking out like a bunch of his memories of the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff. This ends up being Xavier's first encounter with a confirmed mutant that he's been able to observe, at least in this now altered timeline, because at this point the timeline is already being altered. In the present, Cable shows up with Domino to help out, and everyone receives this big holographic transmission from Lilandra, warning them that the Imkron crystal is threatening to not just destroy Earth, but potentially erase all of existence, at least according to all these Watchers that have shown up. So in part 3 of Legion Quest, we see Charles and Magnus get into a bar brawl, a little bonding exercise between friends. Meanwhile, in the future, the Shi'ar scientists have helped the X-Men construct this device that will harness the powers of Professor X and Jean Grey to be able to send Cable's mind back in time, since Cable is one of the few mutants who's got innate time travel abilities. So they can basically send his mental psychic projection back in time to try to make contact with the X-Men that went back in time with Storm, to let them know that whatever it is that they're doing, they got to make sure it stops, otherwise all of existence is at risk. So we're back in the 60s. Legion's up and about. You got this really weird thing that happens here, where Legion takes on the image of his own father and then starts to mac on his mom. So hey, that's kind of trendy in a Game of Thrones way. Anyway, Cable's ghost shows up and manages to get hold of Bishop, give everyone their memories back so that they know what they're there for. Unfortunately, it's all a little too late. In part 4 of Legion Quest, which picks back up in X-Men, basically everything goes to shit. Magnus and Legion are having a giant fight in the skies over Israel. Things are going pretty badly down below. Charles and Lalandra, back in the modern times, are having like this distant, wistful conversation. A lot of people are confused and scared of the end. Things are all going pretty bad for everybody. But of course, what we all know is inevitable to come happens. Legion shoots off an energy beam, and Xavier heroically throws himself in front of the way, saving Magneto and getting himself killed in the process. And of course, if Xavier's dead, then Legion will never have been born to have come back in time. So he and the X-Men from the future all wink out of existence, except for Bishop, who, because he's already a figment ripped out of the timelines of the future, he's still there in the past, while Magneto cradles the body of his now dead friend. And back in modern times, the crystal wave that's consuming the universe spreads. Rogue and Gambit share one last kiss before everything is turned to crystal and then to crystal dust. And finally, the last part of Legion Quest is in Cable. It's kind of a bit of an epilogue, since obviously we just saw the whole universe come to a shattering end there at the end of X-Men. And this one, basically, it's just like a lot of little character moments, a lot of kissing, everyone just kind of reflecting on their life and their feelings here at the very end as they're all waiting for the inevitable to happen. I wasn't a big reader of Cable back in the day, so it was kind of fresh getting to read this. But not as quite as critical to the overall presentation of the story as, say, the first 4 parts of Legion Quest. But yeah, you get Cable hooking up with Domino and get a couple of nice splash pages of characters, and then once again the universe crystallizes and shatters, and we're left with a whole new beginning in X-Men Alpha, which I'll be reviewing that in a couple of the first few issues of the alternate titles in our next little video here, so stay tuned. It'll be coming out in the next couple of days.